Hey Carol, it's Sara Beth, and this is my exam 3. So the first category is pack animals, and the question reads, what are the major animal welfare issues with pack animals? Discuss them generally first, then elaborate on some examples using 2 different species. So some examples of major welfare abuses that are considered to be normal in the pack animal industry include failing to water animals, which often leads to dehydration, tethering with nylon ropes that can cause gnarly rope burns, and failure to provide good foot care that respects the natural function of the hoof. So in the instance of pack mules, they are often given more than they can carry, and this can result in dehydration, fatigue, or exhaustion, and injury. It is rare in this industry for anyone to take responsibility for establishing whether or not a mule is fit to work. So more often than not, older mules are forced to carry heavy loads on steep mountain paths. In Thailand, elephants are the national symbol. So people oftentimes are traveling to Thailand to see elephants and, get a firsthand, they can ride, they can do all these sorts of things with the elephants. But these elephants often live in unsuitable conditions that can result in body and skin conditions, foot health, ocular conditions, and they are always getting wounded and injuries caused by ropes. So, moving on to religious ceremonies, cultural practices. I chose to do that question, and so the question reads, what did you learn about religious ceremonies and animals? How is this related to tourism, and how did it change your views about animal use in religion? So each religion values animals differently. While some view animals as sacred, others see them as a source for food. People who believe in Buddhism have compassion for all lives. The first precept is simply do not kill or harm others. While many Buddhists believe this is in reference to eating meat, others believe that it is simply the act of killing the animal. So in that case, they think that it's not a sin in their religion to go to the store and buy meat because that was already killed and processed for everybody. But if they were to go out and specifically hunt and kill their animal and eat them, that would be considered a sin in Buddhism. Christians believe that animals should be treated with kindness and should be void of all harm. Christians believe that human and non-beings alike are sentient and capable of pain and suffering. So, once again, Christians will eat meat if it is supplied on a bigger basis, but a lot of Christians believe that eating and killing animals for gluttony is not good. Muslims, however, believe that animals exist only for the benefit of human beings while still being treated with kindness and compassion. Islamic teachings do not allow Muslims to consume pork, meat from an animal that has not been properly slaughtered, blood, the meat of an animal that died from electrocution, strangulation, or blunt force, or any food contaminated by the above. So pretty much these 3 religions, they don't have any rules against eating meat. They just think that the process as to how it should go down, it should be different. They do not think that you should go out and kill and slaughter your own animals for your own food. Okay, moving on to wildlife trafficking and endangered species and tourism-based conservation programs. So I chose to do question 5, which is what are conservation-based tourism/tourism-based conservation programs, and what principles should it include in order to be successful? So conservation tourism is simply defined as commercial tourism, which makes an ecological, significant, positive contribution to the conservation. So plenty of countries around the world are taking steps to improve conservation with tourism impacts. In one article that I researched, I learned about communities in Zimbabwe, also known as the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Conservation Area, or the GLTFCA. And they are seeking to improve ecotourism and wildlife conservation in their country. The GLTFCA came up with 2 approaches, one being the historical foundations of initiative and the transfrontier conservation approach. So the Historical Foundations Initiative proved to be very positive in local communities through the creation of several organizations that allow families to capture part of the profit associated with wildlife enterprises. So this is basically just helpful for families to be able to receive some of the economic impact of, tourists in their areas. And the transfrontier conservation approach is relatively new for land and marine animals, where 2 or more countries combine their wildlife sanctuaries. And these sanctuaries could be national parks, conservancies, or even just communal areas. Not only has this approach improved biodiversity conservation and socioeconomic development, but also has enhanced employment opportunities for locals, positive regional collaboration, and poverty reduction. So this is just a great way for countries and their surrounding countries to work together to try and, have a conservation program in place for animals in their country. So, last question is, what are the SDGs? Provide at least 5 examples of how a specific SDG might relate to tourism, and discuss one animal-based tourism experience in depth and relate it to any relevant SDGs. So the 17 SDGs, which stands for Sustainable Development Goals, include no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions, and finally, partnerships for the goals. So while all of these can be connected to tourism, there is one that stands out most to me, and that is SDG 14, which is life below water. So when you take into account cruise tourism, that solely is responsible for tons of unsustainable practices, leaving a huge carbon footprint. A cruise generates large amounts of garbage, sewage, and oil contaminated water. Cheap and dirty bunker fuels produce hazardous diesel particles that create carbon footprint that is 2 to 7 times bigger than that of a long-haul flight. And this is immediately going into the water and into ecosystems. And that water is also called ballast water, which is full of pathogens and invasive species, and like I mentioned, is dumped straight into fragile ecosystems. Trash is often brought to the shore and dumped in areas that lack storage, and local communities are overrun and resources strained by the thousands of passengers that come during such a short period of time. Cruises are the #1 leader in environmental catastrophe in tourism, and it is killing tons of aquatic life. So #InCruises 2020.